And we're back.
Looks like we're back. We had serious tech problems. Very hard to know if it is big food and big ag upset at our great progress. But in any case, next up we have Stefanie Spear. And Stefanie Spear has been doing just a phenomenal job, and we're so glad to have her on. Stefanie, can you hear us? Yeah, we have serious tech problems today. We apologize. Doing the very best we can to figure it out. But I remember I was at one of at Bobby's big announcement in Boston about 2 years ago when they had tech problems. There was a bomb scare, and Bobby so beautifully said that that so many people had been trying to shut him up and change the whole narrative of what could be told, what could be discussed, what could be described, and that, he wasn't going to leave the building and that he recommended that nobody else leave. And then it turned out that it was nothing serious. But so today we have Stefanie Spear next, and I hope that she can join us. Stefanie, are you here? Okay. Kind of unclear what's going on with the tech. I think it might just be down, but on the off chance that it's still up, I'm going to say let's skip to Dr. Robert Malone.
So thanks a lot, Tony.
Malone, are you forward?
Kyle, can you see me? There we go. So hi, Tony. I'm on, and thank you very much. So today is 2 days before the 4th year anniversary of the seminal Defeat the Mandates rally in Washington, D.C., a bitter cold day. And Secretary Kennedy spoke very eloquently at. I think it was one of the most passionate speeches I've heard him give. And he was ridiculed by the Washington Post and the New York Times for basically supporting Nazism, because he spoke about the basic fact that the totalitarian mandates for vaccines that were implemented at the time, and frankly still remain in action, not in quite the same way, but we still have mandates in many states that children must comply with a vaccine schedule. And in the Western states, there's an effort to mandate the most aggressive vaccine schedule in the world, quite literally, including multiple jabs down to 6 months old for the COVID vaccines. We will say more about that, rest assured, coming up at the next ACIP meeting in the end of February. But right now, I want to focus in particular on the bioethics and freedom to choose associated with vaccine mandates. So what does the American Medical Association have to say about mandates and medical mandates? Quote, informed consent in medical treatment is fundamental in both ethics and law. Patients have the right to receive information and ask questions about recommended treatments so they can make well-considered decisions about care. Successful communication in the physician-patient relationship fosters trust and supports shared decision-making. The bottom line is, when you look carefully at modern Western norms in terms of bioethics, it is explicitly clear that medical mandates are not acceptable. Patients have the right to autonomy and self-determination about the medical care that they shall receive. And of course, that extends to their children if they are the parents or guardians of minors in the United States. Those should be the rules. And yet somehow we have this unspoken exemption that vaccines somehow can be mandated. Now, this goes back to a series of seminal cases, basically to mid-1800s UK, with a smallpox outbreak that kind of formed the basis for this. And then it was codified in US law in 1905 in the case of the Supreme Court case of Jacobson versus Massachusetts, which is what's been cited to support the mandates that we have now. But they are not scientifically valid. These mandates for these vaccines have no merit. They totally disregard the variability in human response to pathogens. They disregard natural immunity. They disregard patients' rights. And just as we all insisted on that bitter cold day on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, literally almost to the date 4 years ago, we must defeat the mandates. I think that is absolute bedrock here for MAHA, is we must stop these mandates. And I'm not deaf to the calls that we need to get the COVID vaccine mRNA products off the market. All I can say is stay tuned and wait for the upcoming ACIP meeting. If the FDA won't act, there are other entities that will. So that's my message to you today is, remember, 4 years ago Friday, defeat the mandates. We shook DC with a most successful rally since the events around the election that caused so many to go to jail. They didn't think we could do it. We did it. We can do it again. I ask for all of you to please support that we still need to defeat the vaccine mandates. We need to make it clear that this is not ethical. It's not based on good science. It's based on antiquated public health theory from the 1850s, and it's got to go. And people just have to say no. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks a lot, Robert. And sorry once again for the tech problems, but it seems like we're back online finally. So next up, we have Dr. Robert Redfield. He was CDC Director from 2018 to 2021. He is a virologist and an HIV/AIDS researcher, and he's now a vocal advocate for public health, for MAHA, for transparency, and the author of a book called Redfield's Warning. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tony. I think what I'd like to start by just saying that I want to applaud and strongly support the Secretary Kennedy's and CDC's revised recommendations for childhood vaccination. I think it's a critical step to proactively re-engage parents into the process of making decisions of vaccination for their children. And it's important that we keep the narrative honest and remind everyone that families are not losing their access to vaccines. We're just in certain situations, we're trying to give parents a choice to decide what vaccines they think they're appropriate for their children. So there still are 11 vaccines that are being recommended across the board, but I want to say recommended across the board, and I agree with what Bob said about mandates. There's a group of 6 more that are recommended for high-risk individuals in appropriate settings, and then 6 more that are recommended for joint clinical decision-making between the parent, the child, and obviously the pediatrician. I think it's really a critically important step to re-engage. I think the most important healthcare providers for these children, which are the parents and the pediatricians. I think it's going to be very important for us to develop an effective strategy to stay strong when you see now that a number of the professional societies are suing Secretary Kennedy because they feel this change is so inappropriate. As Bob talked about, giving people the choice to make the health decisions for themselves is something that's intrinsic to medicine. So I think we have to be aggressive in countering a lot of the disinformation that continues on this thing. And I do want to just applaud Secretary Kennedy and the CDC and the team for making these important decisions. I think it's really an important first step in trying to rebuild public trust when it comes to the area of vaccine policy, because clearly the mandates, particularly during the COVID year, and then a fresh look at the mandates that have gone on for decades, as really, I think, fundamentally the undercurrent for why there is such a loss of public trust. And so I applaud the Secretary for those decisions. The second thing I would just say is I feel the same way about the courage to really tell the truth about the food pyramid and get us back, on track in terms of the recognition that good, healthy food is good. I mean, the irony that we have to defend that drinking milk is better for people than drinking sugared sodas. So again, I want to thank all of you all in MAHA that continue to try to articulate this. Obviously, as a strong vaccine advocate in my career, but I'm a strong advocate for honesty about vaccines, and I'm a strong advocate for personal choice about vaccines. And we need to allow people the information so they can make the right personal choice for them and their children. So thanks for having me, and I appreciate everything Buddy's doing.
Thanks so much, and thanks for all the work that you've done in the past and that you're doing now. And it's great to have you on again.
Thanks. God bless.
Next up we have Senator Rand Paul, who's played a big role in the MAHA movement and in so many of the things that we've been trying to do. He's just been an incredible fighter for medical freedom, for real science that serves the public, not corrupt corporate science. He's backed MAHA and the movement's goals and principles for many years. And he's the author of the incredible book, Deception, the Great COVID Cover-Up. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Tony. I wrote an op-ed this week talking about liability protection. I've been opposed to giving liability protection to pharmaceutical industries for vaccines because I think then they don't pay attention to potential vaccine injuries and they aren't as concerned because they're not liable. This liability protection or shield has also been given to Google and to all the internet providers over time. And for a long time, I've thought, well, we need that because if someone calls you a creep online, you call them a creep online. We can't really have lawsuits over all of that. But what I've become more aware of recently, though, is that Google and others are hosting things that are defamatory. So Robbie Starbuck is a guy who broadcast. They've hosted horrendous accusations of him committing crimes with children, all kinds of bizarre things that aren't true, which is defamation, and Google refuses to take them down. So recently I had somebody posting, Rand Paul's taking money from Maduro. So I said, take it down. You can't host things that are defamatory, and yet they continue to do it anyway. So I've been rethinking my position on this. I've always thought the pharmaceutical companies shouldn't get liability protection because then they're less likely to be concerned about the individuals taking their products, including vaccines. But I think I'm become more open to the idea that for when you're accused of a criminal offense online by somebody, because it's so damaging to your reputation and difficult to get back, I think that we do need to reassess giving liability protection to the internet providers. Another thing that's being discussed currently in Washington is how do we make healthcare more affordable? In Trump's first term, I introduced an idea called association health plans. My idea was to let anybody join them, let them go across state lines, and let them be hosted regardless of your occupation. Maybe let a group like Amazon or Costco or Sam's Club do it, so you could join a collective, a large body. If you're have a lawn service and you've got 3 or 4 people working for you, you go to an insurance company, you have no leverage, and you get take it or leave it. But if you were able to join a big buying cooperative like an Amazon or a Costco or a Sam's Club, then you'd be part of a buying group of 1 million, maybe 5 million people, and then you would have leverage to bring prices down. So this is something President Trump agreed with in the first term. He did it as an executive order, but the Democrats sued, so it never became law. I've talked with him again recently. He is in favor of this, and we're going to try to get it as part of the healthcare package. The second thing that I have as part of my healthcare proposal is to expand health savings accounts. Right now, about 10% of people have health savings accounts. I think everybody should be allowed to have them. So I would like to change the law so anybody that wants them can get them. This can be for things sometimes not covered by insurance, like orthodontics, which is one of the most expensive things parents have to go through with kids. But it also could be health-related things. I think that if you're choosing a gym to get in shape, or choosing a diet program, or choosing certain supplements, or doing different things to try to make or allow your body to be more healthy, I think that you should be able to do that for your health savings account. So I would open up the health savings account, let more people put more money in. I would let you do more things with your health savings account. And then finally, I'd let everybody have one. And so I think these two changes, letting people buy together, would reduce prices of not only insurance, but also would reduce prices of drugs. And then letting people have health savings accounts. If you lead a healthy lifestyle and you go many years without a health event, a major health event, as your savings grows in there, you can get higher and higher deductibles and lower premiums. So I think there are some good ideas out there. Both of my ideas don't cost the taxpayer anything. They just allow the free market to work better. And I think there are probably a lot of people in the MAHA movement that would like to see insurance more affordable and assurance that can work for you in the different ways you choose to make your health better. That's all I've got this week, Tony. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And it's a great point that we need to just keep saying, which is that we need to make it easier and cheaper to be healthy in this country, whether it's through, health savings plans or changing the SNAP program so that, people are steered towards buying, or getting healthier food, any of those kinds of things that will just make it possible for millions of people to get healthier food and to lead healthier lives. So thanks so much, Senator Paul. Next up, we have Gary Brecka. He's been a tireless fighter for MAHA. He's a human biologist, a biohacker, a longevity expert. And, as I've said before, he travels all around the world. At one point, I think he traveled to 14 countries in 18 days. He, helps people transform their lives through, increased vitality and longevity. And, he, once again, is one of the loudest champions for MAHA. Thanks so much, Gary, for coming on again.
Tony, thank you so much. I apologize for the background. I'm in a chase car. We're doing a 100-mile race between California and Las Vegas right now. So I just tapped out of the race and jumped in the van. My son is running it with the Nelk boys and raising money for charity for naturopathic cancer treatments for our veterans. But I wanted to, first of all, commend all the speakers that spoke today. There's enormous traction in MAHA right now. I think we're winning the war in the minds of Americans. I think people are waking up to the responsibility that they have to take healthcare choices into their own hands and become a little bit of a citizen scientist. As a part of root cause medicine, most functional medicine doctors would agree that the category of peptides has been an integral part of their treating patients to keep them out of the system. Preventative care, peptides for tissue regeneration, peptides for immune boosting, peptides for telomere lengthening that extend the length of our telomeres. And I think there's a lot of confusion around peptides. There's a very simple task that we're trying to get done with the FDA right now, and that's to have peptides as a class put back onto the bulk list. There's a list called the bulk list, because the vast majority of these compounds, these amino acid compounds, are actually made in the body. Whether or not you're familiar with the category of peptides, we all are familiar with peptides. Insulin is a peptide. GLP-1 that's made in our gut is a peptide. And these are compounds that in about 76% of the cases are made in the human body. And they have profound impact on cell signaling, on hormone function, on inflammatory processes, on detoxification, regeneration, repair, waste elimination at a cellular level. These are phenomenal compounds. They have an incredible safety profile. Some of academia would say that there aren't any gold standard studies on these. We're about to publish a white paper citing more than 800 clinical studies, different white papers. We're having a series of academics write a white paper stating the summary of the efficacy and the data on peptides. But these compounds were at one time on this bulk list, and compound pharmacies could compound these. And what that meant was there was somebody standing between the patient and the peptide, which was a licensed provider. And the compound pharmacy was responsible for sterility, stability, and potency. By taking these off of the bulk list, what has happened is we've gone to the black market. Peptides have flooded the United States from China. A lot of these peptides are rice flour and heavy metals like lead. They don't even contain the peptides like BPC 157 or thymosin alpha or TB500 that they claim to pay. So the safest and most effective thing we could do for the American public is to actually have a licensed practitioner standing between them and a pharmacy who's guaranteeing stability, sterility, and potency, and wipe out this black market for peptides. Not keep these things compounded for research use only, so that they actually, so that a physician would have to risk their license to prescribe these to a patient. There is data that tens of millions of prescriptions have resulted in 0 adverse events, other than sterile procedure events, which are actually not related to the compound at all. We have a flood of these already in big pharma and already widespread use, like I said, insulin and GLP-1s, amongst others. And so I think drawing our attention to this category of preventative care, which is relatively inexpensive, being put back onto this bulk list so that we could have compound pharmacies which are regulated by our Food and Drug Administration and licensed practitioners protecting and standing between the patient and these products, I think would be the best case for us to advocate for this area of functional medicine to really be in service to humanity. It was important enough for me to take a break on this race to just come and say my piece about my support for peptides and the support in academia for peptides. I look forward to sharing this white paper with all of you and giving you the list of cited research, so if you're a nerd like me, you can read it for yourself. But I'll yield back the rest of my time to some of my colleagues. And I thank you for having me on today, Tony. And I, again, apologize for the noise in the background.
Yeah, thanks so much, Gary. And, that's a great point that, like Bobby says, we all have to be CEOs of our own body. We need to be citizen scientists and we have to be open to the latest science, and peptides really are the latest science. It's complicated. People need to do research, but the government shouldn't be standing in the way of cutting edge science. We need access to all of the best science, and this is a big part of that. So thanks again for pointing that out today. Next up, we have Peter Kirby. He is a researcher, writer, influencer. He chronicles his work on his Rumble show called The Abstract. His most recent book is Chemtrails Exposed, a New Manhattan Project. We're so happy to have you on, Peter. Thanks so much.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Tony. This is the first time we've spoken, and we have something else in common today. We both have the cover of the new book that was released yesterday, Chemtrails Exposed, a New Manhattan Project, brought to you by Skyhorse Publishing. We both have it on our right shoulder, which is kind of interesting. Yes. There it is. And this is finally something people can point to and learn from as to what exactly it is that's going on in the skies above us. I mean, we've been looking at these lines in the sky for 30 years now. This stuff started in the mid-90s, these lines that you see coming out of aircraft stretching from horizon to horizon. I wasn't hip to it until 2009. So it had been going on for 13 years before I even realized what was going on. But once I did realize what was going on, I found it completely unacceptable, because when I first heard about it, I didn't believe it. I thought, why would anybody be spraying things out of planes? It doesn't make any sense. You're just ruining everything. But it planted the seed. This was something that I saw online in my conspiracy studies early on. And, but it planted the seed. And I thought, okay, these people are saying that planes are spraying stuff, probably toxic stuff, right? So I'm going to start looking up, and most of us in our daily lives, we don't really look up all that much, especially now with phones. Everybody's like this, buried in their phone. Or, you're driving a car, or you're talking to somebody, and, looking up doesn't really come into the realm of things that most people do every day. But I started looking for these lines, and, I was living in San Francisco at the time, so it was kind of difficult because there's a lot of cloud cover. But I did start seeing little things that I thought, hey, maybe that's one of those. And then one day I saw the big one that, was stretching over a large portion of the sky, this line. And I said, and it was like getting punched in the gut. And, I knew it was particulate matter right off, because I remember as a kid looking up in the sky, seeing on a cold day, you'd see a plane that looks very small in the sky because it's so high, and it would have a little tail on it that would disappear very quickly. And it would be only maybe 10 or 20 lengths of the plane. Really, it would be a matter of 5 seconds or less that the thing would disappear. So, I knew that this was something really bad right off. And I started going about fighting it. The first thing that I did was, since I'm here in California, I said to myself, well, the government does absolutely everything here. They must be monitoring the air for any potential foreign substances floating around in the air. And I found the California Air Resources Board, went to their website. On their website, in the frequently asked questions, it said, aluminum and barium are toxins, and they should not be in the air at all. But then you were also able to generate graphs on their website for aluminum and barium in the ambient atmosphere. And what I found from the charts that they had provided were elevated and rising levels of both aluminum and barium in the ambient atmosphere. And, I think this is actually the most damning evidence. There's been lots of rainwater samples, and I have documented actually 5 different ways that you can prove that chemtrails are not contrails. They're not water vapor, not ice crystals, as the establishment says. I think it's the most damning because it was collected by career scientists, working through a process, working through a government agency, and it has the advent of time. It's showing you years. It's showing you, it had about the charts that I generate and we reproduce in Chemtrails Exposed, they were over the course of about 20 years, I think, the charts that were reproduced. So you see it rising from 1996, which was the year that the spraying began. You see it kind of bottomed out in about 1996 and started rising, especially the barium. Aluminum was rising, but the barium, which should absolutely not be there. I mean, neither one of them should be there. I mean, barium can be radioactive. Aluminum is absolutely horrible for you as well. But, this was my first bone in that I made in the mainstream media. And this was how I got started 17 years ago on this thing. And I've been doing a lot of historical research, and I've been finding just bombshell after bombshell. And, this book is 500 pages long. And, I did a ton of research for it. I spent $10,000, took about 10 years doing it. I only got about a minute left, but, I made thousands of photocopies. I had access to all of the archives from UC Berkeley, which was involved in the original Manhattan Project. I did upwards of 100 interlibrary loans, read hundreds of books, and, I found nuggets everywhere. And it's just far too much to get into. This is why, I have no problem doing 2-hour interviews, so it's kind of like I got to describe the meaning of life in 5 minutes. But hopefully, I guess I hope I did, because we're running down on time now. It's all in the book. And I think that if you read it, you'll have crystal clarity as to what's going on here. The confusion ends now.
Great to have you on. It's science is about questioning authority, and we've been told so many lies for so many years, and we need to be open to absolutely everything. We can handle the truth. We can listen to you, to so many people like you who are telling stories that just are not being told by anybody else. And, it's scary to hear these things, but it's even more scary to know that they're happening and that nobody is actually dealing with them and getting them changed. So thanks so much for the work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Tony.
And congrats on the book.
Thanks.
Next up, we have the incredible Russell Brand. I'm not going to introduce him because there's no way that I can really do that. Welcome, Russell Brand.
Tony Lyons, thank you so much for having me on your, are we going to call it a show? Certainly as part of your magnificent movement. I'm, as always, a grateful participant. Peter Kirby has done some great service there because chemtrails are one of the great idols of the conspiracy movement, in so much as people will get an aluminium or aluminum hat on your head so fast if you question those lines in the sky. They will tell you that there's a million legitimate reasons for it. And only over time, and as a result of the research of men like Peter, we now know that our worst fears, our most insane conjecture, was more grounded in reality than what we were told by, for example, the mainstream media and reassuring voices that operate in systemic spaces. And how many times now have you seen this pattern unfold? Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Building 7 collapsed of its own volition. The vaccine is safe and effective. How many more times must we sit idly by while they decry alternative perspectives that are valid and well researched, but happen to, by some extraordinary coincidence, be antithetical to their ongoing financial and commercial interests? We know now without any doubt that we live within the nexus of global imperialist commercial interests and state-level bureaucracies, umbrellaed by a set of NGOs and global bureaucratic organizations, among them the WEF, the WHO, NATO, the EU, the UN, all these acronyms and initials that might as well spell out Satan, because that's ultimately who they work for. Pause a moment, if you will, to reflect on the WEF's logo and giggle to yourself that the World Economic Forum has neatly embedded within it a 666. Surely, though, we must remain in what Whitney Webb calls spaces that can be corroborated. As she says of Alex Jones, who's done a great deal of good work amidst the occasional errors that he's made, some of the things he says are difficult to corroborate. What I'm grateful for when it comes to men like Secretary Kennedy, Dr. Oz, some of the brilliant people on this call, Lisa, Gary Brecka, Calley and Calley Means, and of course Tony himself, is they make those of us that are of a more, let's call it spiritual bent, inclined towards conjecture because our intuition has long demonstrated that we are right about so much. You were right about the chemtrails. You were right about the vaccines. You were right about 9/11. You were right about the assassination of JFK. You were right about the opioid crisis. You were right that they are putting things in your food like heavy metals and toxins that are egregiously bad for you. If they can't get food right, if they can't even see the right orientation for a pyramid, how can we trust them with more esoteric and complex ideas? For too long, your great country and the globe itself has been in the thrall of the most appalling individuals and institutions, about whom the best we can say is they are deeply fucking inept. But at worst, they are the agents of something akin to, if not actually, evil. My great thanks and my incredible prayer is that we are beginning to see the emergence of a new class of people who are not so heavily webbed and tethered to material outcomes that they can be corralled and shepherded through the labyrinth of these ludicrous lies like mundane, brain dead, and asinine sheep. We are beginning to awaken. We are beginning to understand that the very technology that's being used to control us through false information, censorship, and control can be, and I pray will be, used to create mass information, mass disobedience, direct democracy, decentralization, an informed public in your informed republic will lead to revolution. If the institutions of democracy cannot deliver freedom, which is their only function, then surely they must be challenged. But as the great Mike Benz would tell you, when people say democracy, they do not mean the process of rule by the people. They mean a set of protected institutions that have long been bought by the very kind of interests that day after day, call after call, on this very call and amongst one another, we discuss as being the root, the deep and insidious root of this problem. Lord, I pray for the awakening. Lord, I pray that we can overcome our personal weakness and our selfishness and be willing to die for this, for surely that is what, for some of us, it may cost. Thanks for having me on, Tony. I'm in an unusual mood. I've got a lot on.
Thanks so much, Russell. That was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You know, there is no freedom without health, and we're fighting to make it easier and more affordable to be healthier. You know, we've had tech problems, we've had censorship, we've had propaganda, we've had false information for decades, but nothing is going to stop us. You know, nothing is going to stop us from making this country healthier, from making ourselves healthier for the third time, you know, for being CEOs of our own body and of our own lives. So, you know, that's what this is all about. That's what MAHA is about. And it's always great to have you on. So I want to say next that, you know, we're so grateful for all the people who come on to this show each week, you know, that are such a key part of the MAHA movement, whether it's people inside the government or people outside. And we're grateful for all the people who listen, who bear with us when we have tech problems, and, you know, who celebrate our incredible wins with us and listen to our calls for action. You know, we at MAHA, you know, and I'll say this every time, you know, we have powerful tools at our fingertips. We have the MAHA report on Substack that now has something like 140,000 followers. We have the MAHA Institute that has incredible roundtables, that is doing just a wonderful job bringing in people from all different areas and getting into real in-depth discussions to change policy, to improve policy. Then, you know, we had the historic MAHA Summit, which we're going to have each year, that just brought in all kinds of people, you know, from the vice president on down. Then we've got the legislative tracker, which is going to be a great tool going into the midterms. We've got MAHA films, MAHA books. We have parties at the NED in DC. We've got a mailing list with, you know, over 2 million MAHA warriors now. And then the thousands of influencers who come onto this show who represent millions and millions of followers. So, you know, we're going to harness every bit of that power. We're going to try to work with every cabinet member, with every branch of this Trump government to support and be a powerful resource to the Trump administration going into the midterms, and really try to accomplish everything that can be completed in this historic opportunity that we have. So, you know, we overwhelmingly want to make this administration work. We recognize that Donald Trump is the MAHA president, that he's working really hard with us to make America healthy. And we want to be partners in that battle. So following this call, you're going to get an email with some clips, only the good ones, from this show today. And we hope that you'll repost those, share that content widely, and, you know, go to our website, read MAHA, read our website, the MAHA report, get the most in-depth, up-to-date information on, you know, what's going on in the MAHA movement. So we're thrilled to have you join us. We'll do a better job next time. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.